Hello, my name is Justin Rosenbaum, and my final video presentation will resume my discussion of the stoned ape theory. In case you forgot from my last video, the stoned ape theory is the theory that through psychedelic mushrooms, or as you might know them as magic mushrooms, apes have evolved into humans. This theory was originally introduced by Terence McKenna, the ethnobotanist, and during the 90s he would go around and speak at conventions and discuss this theory. It's important to note that this is just a plausible theory full of a lot of speculation. The speculation in of its nature is true, but it is not obviously proven and involves speculation. Terence McKenna made that very clear at these conventions, so because I am replicating what he spoke about, I also feel the need to make it very clear that this is not something that he spoke about as being 100% true and factual. So this will be a 3-part process. I will go through each part in depth and let you know when we have moved on to the next part, so you can keep track of where we are. So for part 1, this is basically the beginning of everything. Scientists believe that about roughly 5 to 10 million years ago there was a drought. And this drought, of course, went on for many, many years, so they believe. And a lot of rainforests where apes would abide would dry up. So as these rainforests are receding and pulling back, we have more grasslands. And along with more grasslands, we have less room for the apes in the rainforests. So kind of the biggest kid in the playground thing, the smaller tribes or the weaker tribes of monkeys or apes were going to move out of the rainforest as the older, more dominant tribes would have kept their home. So as these small tribes of apes were pushed out of the rainforest, they had a new need to find food, as they were not able to get the food that was from the rainforest. This, of course, through the instinct of survival, caused them to eat pretty much whatever they could eat. This could involve anywhere from different vegetables to mushrooms. Now, there is a psychoactive ingredient inside psychedelic mushrooms called psilocybin, and in large doses this causes insane revelations and heightened levels of consciousness. But in small doses, the effects can't really be noticed unless you had more of it. However, the side effects at any normal dose of psilocybin is 1, visual acuity. So what this basically means, and they've run tests on this and proven this, if you go and take an eye exam and score whatever you score, and later go out, ingest psychedelic mushrooms, and come back and take the eye exam, you will score higher on the eye exam. This is because the psychedelic mushrooms dilate your pupils and allow your eyes to receive more light and in greater detail. So you actually can see better when you are under mushrooms. Another side effect of this is an increased sex drive. So this causes more feelings of wanting to indulge in sex or maybe just reproduce. So these monkeys would eventually be consuming this and have increased visual acuity and a greater desire to have sex with one another. So you can imagine that as years go by, the monkeys, through natural selection, were able to hide from predators because they can see better. So the tribes that weren't ingesting these mushrooms were being killed off, while the other tribes were not only dying less because they could see their predators better, but they were also reproducing at a quicker, faster rate. So as years would go by, eventually the monkeys and apes that weren't eating these mushrooms would be either extinct or very, very few, while the ones that were ingesting these mushrooms would eventually become more dominant. This brings us to part 2. Part 2 is really the most interesting part because this is where the theory really starts to take shape. So, as these monkeys continuously ingest these mushrooms, their consciousness levels are raised. But now we need to discuss this because if a human or you were to take mushrooms right now, your consciousness levels would be raised and you would have all these heightened new feelings, new thoughts. Many people have described their experiences as life-changing. I personally have seen people in my life who have done this and have just been a different person after it because they spoke about these thoughts that they'd never had before due to their raised consciousness. But if we compare ourselves to an ape, there is a clear imbalance of consciousness. Apes, as we look at them, we know that they have brains and that they feel and that they have thoughts, but they are obviously not on the same level as us, and that's why it's us who see them at the zoo and not them who see us. However, they can still have a higher level of consciousness through the ingestion of these psychedelic mushrooms. Now, whether that's all these hallucinations and insane feelings that people describe today, we don't know. But we do know for certain that whatever level of consciousness a particular ape was at, he would be at a higher level after ingesting these. So all of these apes and these tribes are continuously progressing with one another and reaching higher levels of consciousness, and then their children do the same. And so the generations go down, and they keep going, until eventually their children's children's children are smarter than their ancestors. And of course, as we discussed before, the increased sex drive. So as these monkeys are having sex with each other, and at this point they have a higher level of consciousness, it is very possible that they begun to not only have sex with each other for the purpose of reproducing, but also through the act like humans do, through intimacy or personal relationships. And it is very possible that during sex, that at these heightened levels of consciousness, the first emotions experienced by these apes that we might call human were had. Because not only are they in a higher level of connection during sex, but they are also smarter and more aware at this moment, and perhaps more aware of one another. So you can imagine all these apes beginning to learn these new feelings of what really they weren't sure at all, but they knew that that each other had felt it, and that there was a deeper connection among one another. Connections that probably the other tribes did not feel, or certainly not their ancestors at this moment. This brings us to part 3. Part 3 is really basically the time that has elapsed over the years. It's the continued process. As the years go by, these apes become more and more like humans and resemble more of what you see in your everyday life today. But, a common question Terence McKenna was asked is, okay, well, when was the moment that apes became humans? And what he always said is that there really is no moment where you can define, where an ape became a human, because it's almost like the transition period from nighttime to daytime. There really is no defining moment where you say, okay, it's nighttime, or okay, it's daytime. It's the whole process that distinguishes the night from the day, and likewise, it's the whole process that distinguishes an ape from a human. Now this concludes the 3-part process on the stoned ape theory, and at this point I know a lot of you, certainly a lot of people at the conventions that Terence McKenna spoke at, kind of maybe listen to this with interest, or perhaps no interest at all, but mostly kind of just with an attitude of, okay, well, yeah, probably not. And I honestly don't disagree with you. Do I believe that's the way we have evolved? No, but we don't know for certain. Um, everything we've discussed this year in our astronomy class through, religion and science, and really it all boils down to we don't know how humans have come alive today for certain. You can have a belief in a religion or a belief in atheism, but whatever you have, it's just going to be core and central to just your belief, and that you don't know for certain. So maybe I can't prove the Stone Dave theory right, but you can't prove it wrong. So I think it's important that we celebrate and discuss different religions, different beliefs, different theories, because none of them are technically proven wrong. So why not discuss them? There's a quote here by Terence McKenna that I'd like to read to you, so you can kind of get the idea of the theory in his own words. Again, these are not my words. I give credit to Terence McKenna for the following quote. Whether the mushrooms came from outer space or not, the presence of psychedelic substances in the diet of early human beings created a number of changes in our evolutionary situation. When a person takes small amounts of psilocybin, visual acuity improves. They can actually see slightly better, and this means that animals allowing psilocybin into their food chain would have increased hunting success, which means increased food supply, which means increased reproductive success, which is the name of the game in evolution. It is the organism that manages to propagate itself numerically that is successful. The presence of psilocybin in the diet of early pack hunting primates caused the individuals that were ingesting the psilocybin to have increased visual acuity. At slightly higher doses of psilocybin, there is sexual arousal, erection, and everything that goes under the term arousal of the central nervous system. Again, a factor which would increase reproductive success is reinforced. The last quote that I want to read that Terence McKenna said kind of wraps up this entire thing about our theories as humans and as how we continuously try to progress. So here's his last quote. He said, "You've heard me talk about Genesis as the story of history's first drug bust. It was history's first drug bust. I mean, that story is the story of the suppression of an earlier, feminine-driven mushroom religion. And once we stopped taking psilocybin, that old primate behavior pattern, male dominance, reasserted itself. But now, not in an animal species, but in a species with language, technology, agriculture, strategic planning, memory, recall, so forth and so on. And we use the re-emergence of that tendency to establish cities, kingship, slavery, property, the whole grab bag of pathologies that characterize Western civilization were born around the re-emergence of male dominance. We have an itch that we can't scratch until we make our way back to the primary chemical mediator of our humanness, and that was, I'm convinced, psilocybin. And that is the missing link. This would allow us to understand the sudden doubling of human brain in less than 1.5 million years, one of the greatest mysteries of evolutionary theory, so forth and so on. And the fact that society is so anxious on this subject is an indication that this is the real taboo. We have found it, this is it, and therefore it has to be brought out of the closet. And it wouldn't hurt for us to come out of the closet. I mean, when we are secretive, when we deny it, we are carrying out the man's work for him. They don't have to arrest us if we're willing to be our own guards and police. It's absurd.